Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today to our first edition of Let's Talk Export. Today we'll go around the table. We've got some trade specialists with us, starting with Adam Pearce from Export Finance Australia.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks for joining us. We've got Jacasta from Australian Multilingual Services.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And we've got Gint Silins from Spruson Ferguson. Thanks for coming along, Gint.
Sure. Good to see you.
Yeah, great. So today we're going to cover off on China. It's one of those topics that can be very controversial. It can be something that people get afraid of, but today we're going to break down the barriers and talk to these exports about learning how to export into China. So obviously we're going to talk about finance, we're going to talk about some cultural differences and about your IP, something that comes up nearly every day, what we see in the trade space. So first of all, we'll have a bit of a talk around Jacasta. I'm going to start with yourself. Okay. So can you tell us, what are some of the best marketing strategies to enter the Chinese market? So because it's so completely different to what we do in Australia.
Absolutely. So first point of entry to really test the market and see if products are successful are really some very simple e-marketing strategies.
Right.
And e-commerce platforms that are available, that are China-specific e-commerce platforms. And a massive first consideration is that you must translate all of your product information and your brand messaging into accurate and culturally appropriate Chinese translation to sell on those platforms.
Jacasta, is it because majority don't speak English, or is it because they deserve that respect of it being in their
Absolutely. It's two reasons. One is key search terms will come up. People will be searching in Chinese language on those platforms.
Yes,
if your content is loaded and all the product descriptions are in English language, chances are you'll be missed from those searches.
Yes.
And the other thing is that it's a sign of respect and also competes favourably, because obviously it's a massively competitive marketplace.
Yes.
And you don't want to put yourself at a disadvantage by not translating your content so that you're competing on even ground with the Chinese products that are being sold on these platforms.
Yeah, wow, fantastic. That's really good. We might touch on that a little bit later
Absolutely.
as well. There's so much to talk about. So much more to talk about. Gint, this is a big question, okay? Can you tell us, how do we actually protect our product in China? Is it possible?
Yeah, so let's talk about a branded product. So there's a trademark and a product or a service. So generally speaking, you should take out some protection before you go to China. Regarding trademarks, branding, China is the first to file country. So it means that if someone were to file for that trademark before you in China, they would be the owner of that trademark.
Right, even if you've been using it in Australia for 10 years, if they filed for it first, they do
That's
that.
right. There are some exceptions to the trademark being well known,
right.
Spilling over into China. But generally speaking, the first person to file for registration is the owner of the trademark.
Wow.
Now, regarding protecting the product or the service, you need to take out patent protection or a design registration before public disclosure, before using it commercially in the countries of interest, including China. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no protection available. It can be ripped off.
It can be, and it has been. We've heard that story
it
before,
does get
haven't
ripped
we?
off.
Even in the news,
any questions in relation to IP?
Well, I would
to
say
that topic?
Just what Jacasta was saying. People often ask, do I need to file my trademark in English, in Chinese?
Yes, good point.
Both?
Yep.
I guess it depends on the product or the service that's being offered. And if you are if you're selling to the general Chinese public and they only understand Chinese, the English may be lost on them. So the Chinese trademark equivalent of the English may become more valuable than the English original trademark.
Absolutely.
So generally you would register both, and choosing a good Chinese trademark is very tricky and important, because you can go for a phonetic equivalent or a translation that imparts a meaning, a feeling. So you speak to the experts.
Excellent advice. So they come to you first.
That's right.
And it's one of the first things that we cover off with finance as well, is if you're going to China, to make sure it is actually there's some kind of protection there.
Great.
So it is important from a financier side as well.
Okay. Speaking about finances, tell me, what's the best way to get paid, or what's the best payment options when you're dealing with China, Adam?
There are many options there to consider, but I suppose the best way is understanding what the risks are in the business. Obviously, getting paid full upfront before you deliver the goods is the best way.
Option, isn't it? Yes.
That is the best way. Generally, that happens in the first couple of trades, but then your customer will want some terms.
Yeah, right.
So you need to work out what kind of protection mechanisms you have, i.e. control of stock or goods, or is it, you get part payment or progressive payments, or is it against a standby letter of credit, back to back against your bank? So there's multiple options to consider within your actual business strategy.
Yes.
What it is really important that you actually understand the risks. Every transaction has risk. China has some risk, and you've got to mitigate them through your strategies within your business strategy to actually doing business in China. So it is really important that you understand, and also who you're actually partnering with. Who's your client? Are they actually going to pay?
Yes, so on that point, and it's something Jacasta touched on earlier, in China we understand that it's all about trust within a business.
That's
So
right.
if you've built that trust over a long period of time, should you feel more comfortable with the payment terms? Because that trust is there. That's a big part of them, saving face and trust. Yeah. So for the Chinese people?
I think it helps.
Yes, okay.
But you still need to have.
It's not the be all end all.
No,
And it
Yeah.
takes a long time to build up that trust. So in the early days of trading with a company, that trust relationship is still in its early inception stages, really.
Yes.
Yeah. So you do need to back it up with paperwork, your contracts,
Okay.
How you're doing trade. So that is important. Trust is certainly one of the things that you need to spend some time on to basically develop.
Yes.
And it can take time. It's a journey.
Just quickly explain for me a letter of credit.
So basically, a letter of credit basically determines a method of payment. So there's multiple ways that you can do it.
Yep.
But basically, you can either have it so that you control the goods until payment comes in, and there's the bank over in China would have to accept the Australian bank for the letter of credit as well. So you need to understand what the risks are associated with it.
Okay.
So it's about control.
Okay. Great.
So
Great. Obviously, a lot to learn. That's really good
I
advice.
probably
Thank
have
you.
something to say on this.
Yes.
Basically, get all your agreements, international agreements in writing. Handshake agreements.
Don't worry.
You'll find out
In
if a
both
relationship
languages.
in both
Right,
languages,
good point.
vetted by lawyers. That's right. Because when the relationship gets strained, where you're going to look at your written agreement. If you don't have one, good luck.
Do they stand
very
by
true.
their written agreement? Because not all cultures do.
You've got some that do and some don't.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Perishable
risky.
goods is a really good one.
Yeah.
Because if you're exporting perishable goods like fruit, for example, and it sits over in the port,
Very time sensitive.
and you don't really have a strong contract, they will hold back payment. That happens a lot. And so, it's another risk that you
It could spoil, and
Well,
then
the goods are
what
spoiled.
about-
Product.
Then
Yep.
you lose the product.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
great advice.
regarding my laugh there, my crazy laugh, what happens is when you point distributors, agents, sellers,
Yes.
China, any other country, that agent might think I'm putting a lot of time and effort into promoting this brand, this product, and I want to be the sole distributor.
Right.
And what normally happens, or can happen, I wouldn't say normally happens, but that agent, seller, importer might think, well, I put so much time and effort in this, I want some kind of ownership, I want some kind of security.
Yes.
And so they might register your trademark, the Australian exporter's trademark as their own,
Wow.
in Chinese characters as well, which might become the more important trademark.
Yep.
They could set up in competition. It happens time and time again. So get relationships written up in agreements and protect your trademarks, your products. Otherwise, because the agents, the importers, whatever, they will say, I put so much effort into this, I want some kind of security. I don't want other importers, other distributors.
And is that just a clause you can put into the contract? You're not to trademark this in your own language, or it's
You put in about who owns the trademark, who owns the IP. Say,
Yeah.
we own the IP.
okay.
As the agent, you respect our rights, you acknowledge ownership by us, do the right thing, etc., etc. So they're the types of clauses. So written agreements are very important. And so it doesn't always have to be a squatter or someone unscrupulous person. It could be a business partner that just decides, you know what, I've got some rights, I should have some rights in this. I want to keep doing what I know what to do,
Right.
and they become competitors.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a trust no one, get stuff in writing, protect your rights.
It's scary when you think about it, Gint. So just tell me, I mean, if you're going into China, it's a no-brainer that you're going to look at IP. Just tell me, for a startup business, what are the costs involved? Is it, because people say, geez, you've got to trademark in every country. Is it too expensive? Can we afford to do it? Can we afford not to do it? Could you give us a rundown or an estimate of what we're looking at?
Yeah, so sure. There are different ways of filing into China, using a Chinese agent, a trademark attorney over there, or filing through the Madrid Protocol, which an Australian agent can do. You can do it yourself. I would recommend an expert do it though, in every case. So different costs. So generally using a Chinese agent, anywhere between around the $2,500 mark, but the costs depend on
dollars or
Australian dollars. So it depends on how many classes of goods or service you need to cover, yada yada. And
that doesn't sound too expensive, like in the scheme of things, really.
Valuable investment, really, in terms of what we've been discussing.
Yeah, and ongoing costs of registration, which would typically be around 14 months later, all going well through examination. Usually doesn't exceed once or twice the filing costs. There could be exceptions if there are problems during examination, or it's opposed by a third party.
Yeah.
Now the other way through the Madrid Protocol, around $3,500, depending on who you use, how you do it, and there are pros and cons to doing each through each system.
Wow.
So is one of those a more time-effective way of approaching protecting your IP, or
so either way will give you a pending right in that country once you file up through either mechanism, and both ways take about a year and a half to go through the registration. I think the Madrid Protocol is a little bit earlier that I've seen, but not always. Each of them have pros and cons, so talk to your attorney.
Yeah,
so it's really like an insurance policy, really.
It is an insurance policy.
It's only valuable if you have to use it, like if someone's trying to rip off your brand.
Yeah.
And
the
a
other
big amount of loss, though. It's it's a high risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people fail to appreciate the flip side of the coin. It's not just protecting IP, but can I even use that IP in that country? Just because you can use your brand, your trademark here in Australia doesn't mean you can use it in China. Someone might have earlier rights.
Yes.
And there are squatters who do go through the Australian Trademarks database and the company, the ASIC database, and they look for trademarks of potential interest.
That's actually happened to our company.
Wow.
Right.
For people who were trading counterfeit Ralph Lauren goods into Australia using our company's ABN.
Right.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, first-hand experience of that.
That's amazing. Okay, great advice, and we could touch on that again a little bit later. But do you know what? I'm really interested because it's so hard when you're going into a different culture and a different language. Jacasta, how do you create really engaging and accurate communications for your brand? How do we do that with China?
I think a very important consideration that a lot of people don't create time and take a big enough step back and look at doing things from an organic point of view is, before you start translating any of your content, learn cultural awareness. Look at your market, look at the different buyer profiles that you're targeting. China is a very, very diverse country. Chinese speak Mandarin, simplified Chinese in writing, but across China there are different regions with different types of dialect. Mandarin Chinese is across the board the official language.
Okay.
So everybody will read and speak and write Mandarin and simplified Chinese, but there are different demographics in terms of the price point that you'll be able to market things at in different regions of China, different degrees of contemporary versus traditional culture, different types of religion even. So really what you need to do is think about where you're targeting. You're targeting the big cities, or you're trying to have a more broad target.
Yes.
And the other thing is there are cultural symbols and traditional values in China that are very important to bear in mind. China traditionally is a Confucian country, so the Confucian philosophy is really, really based on the idea of respect, hierarchy, patriotism. Yes. Patriotism is enormous.
Right.
And also values of family and relationship and face preservation.
Yes.
So family is very important, and that's one of the other things that plays into the type of wording that you're going to be using in your translation and how you write about your brand and the product information. Another consideration is tone of language is very different in China to the way we talk in English, which is for branding and marketing.
You give me an
It's quite
example.
Americanized. So direct instructions or very direct use of the word you
Yeah.
and sort of telling people that they're going to get something out of the use of a product is very, very, very bad practice for China.
Wow.
So it needs to be much more indirect and it needs to be
Softer.
suggested. That's right.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can offend.
Wow.
And that's certainly what you do not want to do.
That's amazing. And you know, a lot of the topics that we're touching on today can be a little bit scary, and we don't want to scare people off because once you do get it right,
That's
the
right.
opportunities are endless.
Lucrative, yeah.
That's exactly right. The
Absolutely
size of
right.
the market, the growth of the market, and what's happening. So
It's an
I think
enormous
that's
opportunity.
I think that's important. But like anything, if you want to achieve it, there's a little bit of background to do.
Look
That's
before you leap.
Look before you.
Yeah.
I've heard that from you before. Yeah.
Very wise
It
word.
is a journey. That's what it is.
Now,
You
Adam, I
gotta
want to
find
come
that.
back to you and touch you on something in relation to when you're working with a bank. A lot of people just think, okay, they're my banker, what's the big deal? But how important is it to have that communication with your bank or your finance provider moving forward? Tell me about what that relationship needs to look like.
Yeah, well, your relationship with your bank needs to be strong.
Yeah.
The basis is when you're expanding just here domestically or internationally, be it China or somewhere else, you need to have a financier that understands your business model and understands how they potentially could fund that transaction or their ongoing need for the business. So one of the things I stress with Export Finance Australia is to ensure that you actually have a strong relationship with your incumbent financier,
You're right.
because generally speaking, they are the largest equity holder in your business as you continually grow. And open communication is one of the things I really stress a lot with businesses, various different size, small, medium to large. You've got to have an open dialogue with your bank. Some things don't go to plan.
Yeah.
That's business. But if you can communicate that with your bank on an open,
Yes.
transparent method, you're generally going to get a better outcome as long as it's not dire straight, but you're generally going to get a better outcome from a financier, and that's what you want. So you need to have a strong relationship with your bank. What my role is, I can complement the bank, so I can actually assist the bank in doing transactions, or I can lend directly. So it really depends on what the need is, but the
Yes.
key takeaway with that is a strong relationship, open and honest,
Great.
and ensuring
Don't
that
hide away. Make the phone call. Build the relationship.
it's no different to doing business with your customers. You've got to build that relationship.
I think that's good advice because I don't think everybody would do that. They would see the bank as not their friend or not being able to build that relationship, and I
So
think that's.
I see it all the time.
that's
Businesses are basically capped out on the financial position because they can't get the finance to go to that next level, or they miss
Sure.
out on that opportunity for a contract, and that's because they haven't been transparent or they haven't been proactive
Yes.
in their business plan
Right.
to foresee what they need in the next 12, 24 months.
Business plan. Have your business plan ready.
Absolutely.
That's great
100%.
advice. 100%. Back on IP, does the law change regularly? Like, is it how do we keep up to date with that, or do we just go to our law firm and they look after it for us?
Yeah, they'll keep up to date with changes, and there are changes coming through. November,
China?
Yeah, November
Okay.
this year, where they're protecting more against bad faith applications. So basically, if there was a guy in China and he was filing for every big trademark out there, Apples and all that,
Yes.
there's now a provision that's going to kick in to stop someone like that doing what they're doing,
That's
that
brilliant.
practice, because if they can show that that person wasn't planning to use those trademarks, just was going to acquire them and sell them on or license them, then there are some new provisions coming into effect. So that's good.
That's
When do
really
they come in?
1st of November, I believe, of this year.
Quite soon.
So actually, but as with all new provisions, you know, they need to be tested, and
Of course.
who knows, but it's a step forward for Australian exporters.
That's good. That's good to know. That's good to know. So before we wrap up, I just want to go back to you, Jacasta.
Yes.
You mentioned before about e-commerce platforms. Can
That's
you
right.
name a few or give us a bit of
Absolutely.
direction, because you know they're so big and
That's
so
right. So
so important.
Alibaba is a name that everybody's heard outside of
that's
China.
Right.
Inside China, that owns about 35% of the market
Okay.
for e-commerce sales, but it's not called Alibaba. There are two different platforms. One's called Tmall,
Right.
the other one's called Taobao.
Right.
And they're good platforms to start selling in China on because they are strictly business to consumer. So it
Okay.
separates the counterfeit and the poor quality produce from the very well tested and validated core good quality products.
Yes.
It also means that you can start to test the market in a very validated way. You know that you're being exposed to a very large market portion, and you can really start
So
to
you can get
quantify the
feedback on your
return.
product and
That's
make any
right.
changes you need.
Live
That's
data
great
feedback.
advice.
That's
Great
right.
advice.
And there's another platform which is fantastic in that it takes care of the logistics for delivery, which is called Jingdao, and that has delivery and logistics tied into the relationship as a buyer,
Bit like
selling on
Amazon?
that platform. Yeah, very
Okay.
similar.
Okay.
Absolutely. And there's another upcoming but very, very, very popular with post-90 birth year women in China, which is called
They are the
Shangchuan
boss.
Hu, which is a big buying market, and it translates as the Little Red Book.
Okay.
And that's a very interesting platform because it's a social media platform that has commercialization to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can sell products on that platform, and people will actually very actively review your products. So you can gain traction socially and with your marketing. If a product is popular, it will grow. It will naturally grow.
It's like credibility
in
within that
credibility.
website
That's
from the
absolutely
consumers.
right.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
that's a
amazing.
really good one if anyone's in the market for a product that will appeal to that type of demographic.
That's amazing. That's
And there are
amazing.
lots more, but they're changing all the time. But those are the four key ones to really know about.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we might wrap it up there. What's important is that at the end of this, you will see some contact details from all of our guests today, because I'm sure we have many more questions in relating to China. We hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you for your time, and please send us your feedback because we'd love to hear from you. Okay, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody. Thank you.